Morning. So today we're going to talk about stormwater. So stormwater is any type of precipitation that hits the ground. So when you have precipitation, which can be snow, sleet, hail, rain, whenever that hits the ground, it's called stormwater. So when stormwater hits areas on the ground that are vegetation, like grass or forested areas, a lot of that water will soak into the ground, like you can see in your yard. But if we get too much rainfall, then it will run off of the vegetated areas, and if you're in a neighborhood, it'll go into the streets. So the streets are made of concrete, and water can't soak into that either. So any excess water that flows from your yard will combine with the water that's already in the street that can't soak in, and that flows down the street. And then whenever you're walking around or driving around your neighborhood, sometimes you'll see little holes in the side of the road. Those are called stormwater inlets. So when that water flows down your street, it'll eventually go into a stormwater inlet. Those inlets lead to pipes, which are called stormwater pipes, and those pipes lead to the nearest creek or lake or other type of water body near those stormwater inlets. So as water flows down the street towards that inlet, it can sometimes pick things up in the road. So if you've ever driven around and seen litter on the side of the road, or you see somebody mow their lawn and then they blow those grass clippings out into the street, all that stuff gets picked up by this stormwater as it flows to the stormwater inlet. So those are called pollutants. Anything that is not supposed to be in our air or water is considered pollution. So you can have grass clippings, leaves can be pollution for water, trash, litter, dirt can be considered pollution. So we've got a lot of construction sites around Flower Mound. So that dirt, if it leaves that construction site and goes into a creek or lake, that is a pollution source. So all of that pollution that goes into our creeks that gets picked up along the way by the stormwater is eventually going to lead to a lake. And that pollution, the dirt, fertilizer from the lawn, grass clippings, that can hurt the animals that live in those creeks and lakes. And lakes are oftentimes where we get our drinking water. And we will also, people like to go boating in a lake or swimming or fishing. So if we put a lot of pollution in those lakes, it's going to make it harder for us to have fresh drinking water at our houses. And it's going to affect our ability to enjoy those lakes for fishing, boating, or swimming. So that's one reason we try to get people not to pollute the ground in their neighborhoods by blowing grass clippings or littering, because all that litter eventually ends up in our creeks and our lakes. And we don't want to go swim in a lake that's full of dirt and trash and other types of pollution that can make us sick. Today we're going to do an activity where we model a watershed. So a watershed is just any area of land that all drains to a common point. So when you've got your stormwater falling in your neighborhood, that neighborhood is what's called a watershed for the nearest creek. So if you live near Forestwood Middle School, all of your water is going to fall on the ground in that neighborhood and flow to Timber Creek. All of our water in Flower Mound flows to Lake Grapevine and Lake Louisville, so we are in the watersheds for those two lakes. And eventually it'll flow down to the Trinity River. So we're in what's called the Elm Fork Trinity Watershed, because we're in the watershed for that water body. So today we're going to draw a little neighborhood, and then we're going to introduce pollution into our watershed, and then we're going to add stormwater to see how the stormwater can pick up pollution as it flows through a watershed and goes to your nearest creek or a lake or other type of water body. So first what we're going to do is draw our watershed in crayons and all the stuff in it. We're going to draw roads, houses, parks, lakes, cars, pets, all that different stuff that's going to be in your watershed we'll draw in crayons. And then once you've drawn a watershed in crayons, we will add pollution with markers. Once we've drawn all of our pollution, which is going to be your trash, dirt, oil from a car, if it leaks, leaves, grass clippings, fertilizer, stuff like that. Once you've drawn all that in marker, we're going to use spray bottles and make it rain on our cities. And then I want you to pay attention to all that pollution you drew in markers, and I want you to watch and see what happens when you add rain to your watershed, and pay attention to whether that pollution stays where it started or if it flows down with that water and all joins together to make a really polluted water body if we don't keep our watershed clean. So this is our watershed that we created. So you've got roads, you've got houses, you've got the flower mound with the flowers on it. You've also got cars, people, pets, a store, and then you've got your water body over here, and then there's a creek running through here too. So we've also added our pollution with our markers. We've got oil and grease in blue and purple along the roadways. We have fertilizer and grass shown in green. We have litter shown in red, and we've got animal waste shown in brown. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add some topography to our watershed because our town is not perfectly flat like a piece of paper. So what we're going to do is we're going to gently crumple up our watershed, and then we're going to uncrumple it. But you want to leave your highs and lows so that the water has somewhere to flow. So then you'll take a plastic tray and add your city with its new hills and valleys. And then we're going to introduce precipitation into our watershed. So watch what happens to our pollution when we start raining in our city. So here we've got it on the roadway, and you can see that our purple grease is not staying where we drew it. So it starts at the top, and then as it flows down, that's how water moves through a watershed. It goes down to the lowest point on the ground. So you can see how the water travels down to these low points, and it's picking up all this pollution that was just over in our neighborhood. And now all the pollution is down in our creeks and our lakes. And this water doesn't look as nice and clear as it did when it fell from the sky. Now it has picked up all of the oil, grease, fertilizer, trash, and it's combined it all into one area where you've got some nasty little pockets of water. So that's what happens in our real life watershed in our neighborhoods too. All of our water starts out clean when it falls from the ground or falls from the sky, but then when it hits the ground, it interacts with all of the pollution that we introduce into our neighborhoods, the trash, litter, fertilizers, dirt, and then that pollution doesn't stay where we put it. It all ends up in our water.